Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's time for another video. This time it's gonna be a recap of the Bloodstorm event that we had in Eindhoven, the Old World event where we played with 1500 point lists. You can find my list and all the other lists in the previous video that I did. I'll give a bit of a short recap. So as you can see, we are in deployment of my first game here. My deployment from right to left, I have my Demon Prince, of Mark of Chaos Undivided with a Biting Blade, Armor of Meteoric Iron for a 5-up armor save, always lore familiar, so you can choose your spells, and the Favor of the Dark Gods, so you can reroll once on the Gaze of the Gods or Eye of the Gods table. I have a Mark of Chaos Undivided Chariot, Heavy Chariot. I have a single Dragon Ogre champion with a great weapon. I have 8 Forsaken of Slaanesh. I have 6 Chaos Ogres with great weapons. I have an Exalted Hero on a steed with the Dragon Slaying Sword. I have 7 Chaos Marauders with Flails and Mark of Corn. Another Sharp Attack Dragon Ogre, and I have my Chaos Knights with Frenzy with Mark of Corn, Lances. And I have some War Dogs off the table in this picture. So that is going to be my list for the entire event. And well, the first opponent of the day for me was Empire of Sonstal. It's a beautifully painted army. It doesn't really come through in the pictures, or at least not as nicely as the army was actually painted. But what do we have for him? We have on the left side some Empire Archers with a unit of Empire Knights. I believe they are just the normal core Empire Knights, so strength 3, weapon skill 4 still. Then we have an Empire Wizard on, I have to think here, I think also Demonology, because he also had Steed of Shadows and Demonic Figure. And then he has 5 Empire Archers. He has a big block of veteran Empire State Troops, if I remember correctly, with the Griffin Standard and I don't think this is not the general, because this is the BSB actually, on a Demigriff in the unit. Then he has a Steam Tank and a unit of Knights of the Sun Griffin, Demigriff Knights. And then here what you can see, oh my god, what can we see? It's a wing! So behind the building there's still his Empire General on a Griffin. I think it was an Imperial Griffin, this one, so the big one. Then, yeah, let's just go through the game a little bit. So this is deployment. We were just playing the regular deployment, whichever name that might bear. My opponent was going to go first, I believe. And yeah, we are using slightly smaller tables, so we are using the black lines indicated on this board instead of the entire game mat. Like the game mats are 48 inches by 72. The board we played on was very weird 44 inches by 60, I believe. But just with the smaller game size, it did fit still quite well. So deployment wise, what are my thoughts? My opponent had to drop units before me, more or less. Like in this list, I still have my dogs, I have my 2 Dragon Ogres that are highly mobile, I have my Marauders that I don't care too much about. And after that, it really begins a bit with the deployments that I have to do that make some impact. But then again, my opponent kind of has the same with the Archers, with the Knights, and then at some point I believe he just put the Empire or the infantry block in the middle. So yeah, what do I think? He didn't deploy the Steam Tank. I think he left that one nearly to the last. So counter-wise, I think it's quite good for me to have Dragon Ogre here on the left flank. I think he will survive the shooting and arrive into the Knights, so that should be fine. Otherwise, the Knights, against these Knights, I expect that to win. Dragon Ogres have a good matchup against the infantry. A bad matchup I expect against the Steam Tank. But anyway, anything in my list has a bad matchup against the Steam Tank. And my Dragon Slaying Sword guy is basically just playing in the backfield to make sure that I can counter the movement of my opponent's Griffin. I did deploy the Demon Prince behind the hills so he could not get shot by the cannon, and that is basically how we started. So this is after my turn, turn 2? Yes, after my turn 2. So yeah, I really advanced to the side of my opponent basically. So what did happen in the meantime? In the meantime, my opponent shot off 2 ogres with his steam tank cannon. On the left side, the dogs went forward. They charged the Empire archers, and then the archers fled. The dogs actually made a very long charge, and they ended up into the knights, but it didn't do anything to the knights. And then, meanwhile, my knights also had to charge and do the complete charge range. So this is going to be the start of my opponent's turn. As you can see, the Empire Knights have a very easy charge into my knights. My opponent's Empire Griffin has basically chances everywhere to charge except for my Demon Prince and the Dragon Ogre here. However, the Dragon Ogre did advance to a place where my opponent's Demigryph Knights charge in. He will get 1 Demigryph in contact, the others can attack my Dragon Ogre with 1 attack each, so I will most likely survive, and then I have a counter charge with the Demon Prince, with a Chariot. So this part I felt quite confident about. The Griffin, basically he can choose whatever he wants to charge, but he will have a counter charge of the Marauders with Flails, with Frenzy here, and he will face a counter charge with a Dragon Slaying Sword. In any of the other situations, quite likely. So I pushed these units forward with the idea of just figuring out what would happen with a steam tank. But basically I was already expecting that I wouldn't really do anything to the steam tank, and the steam tank would grind me out over the turns. What my opponent decided to do with the Griffin, he decided to charge my Dragon Ogre champion. So this guy should actually have been a little bit further away, because there's no need really to throw away my Dragon Ogre like that. But then we go to this next picture basically. So my knights do get engaged by the Empire Knights. I don't suffer any casualties though. My opponent cleans up the Dragon Ogre. I do engage the Steam Tank. Steam Tank eventually grinds out my 2 units. This is an entire mess with the Demigryphs, where, well, basically I do survive. I only get 1 wound on my Dragon Ogre. I do counter charge, my opponent breaks away, he rallies with the fallback in good order, having suffered a total of 4 wounds, I think, so that could have been a bit higher, I would say, but I at least expected to do a bit more damage. My guy is still ready for a counter charge. My opponent has -2 movement from my Mark of Chaos Undivided spell, so he didn't really want to charge into my guy, which I can understand. He just tried to get away, but -2 movement really made that difficult. Yeah, so I think at this point it's my opponent's turn. He's going to move these guys out of the way. He's going to go a bit back with the Griffin to give me a very difficult charge that I can't even declare. And we are grinding it out with the Steam Tank. But this is basically the moment where I realize that some units in Old World are not really correctly priced yet. Like the Griffin is still okay to find. Steam Tank. So even with Chaos Ogres that have great weapons that are meant to go through armor, like my front rank with 4 ogres would have 13 attacks, hitting on 4s because it still has defensive 3, wounding on 5s because it has toughness 7, and then I only have AP 2 with armor bane 2. So on 6s he doesn't get any saves, so that's good at least. So half of the wounds that I will be doing he doesn't have any saves to. But still he has 10 wounds, which is just an absurd amount of wounds. I have no idea how you would have to remove this piece of equipment that is 250 points of value. On the other hand, the Empires core infantry. I think it's the other end of the spectrum where basically if you have one unit left that hasn't done a first charge yet and you get into this unit with first charge, like for example this guy, then the opponent doesn't get any rank bonus. They might break and flee, and then you lose your points very easily. So later in the game, the Chaos Knights, they mop up the Empire Knights, and yeah, I just go off the board because of Frenzy. I come back and I don't really contribute anymore to the game. My opponent's Griffin was standing on this base. I gave him a replacement base because of the wings. They were quite big. I did charge the Empire Archers that my opponent used to block my guy from charging his Griffin. And then I went for an overrun. I needed like a 10 to get into this block, and I rolled exactly a 10. So I did get into the block. So this was my second charge, so my opponent does get his rank bonus. So basically this means that I lose combat by a lot, and I will either break and flee or I'll fall back in good order. If I fall back in good order, my opponent more than double outnumbers me, so I will flee. But then again, with the positioning of the Griffin, it's going to be impossible for my opponent to catch me if I break. And then if I break, well, I'm going to be out of the game probably. But it's not that much of a big deal because my opponent's Griffin doesn't really do anything anymore as he's facing this way. I do have my Demon Prince on the hill. I have my champion here on the hill. My chariot. Basically, I don't really want to engage this big block. My opponent also didn't really want to engage me at this point anymore. So I did clean up all of the support pieces of my opponent, but I couldn't get any more through the Griffin because I didn't have my Dragon Slayer guy anymore available. I did manage to pick up the Wizard because basically together we concluded that there shouldn't be any situation in which my skirmishing Demon Prince on the hill would not be able to contact his guy over there. Because after this it was going to be my turn. So he only had a reform with this unit, basically, where he could... He was trying out a couple of things, but at some point I was like, you didn't mark your unit. So this is something that carries over from playing 9th Age a lot. Basically, you mark every single unit that you touch, and then if you do something, you can always go back to the situation before you moved anything. But if you don't do that, then you get very quickly just rules discussions of like, can I do this? Can I not do this? I don't know. Can you do this? So we spoke about it for like a minute or two, where I was like, well, given the state of the board, I don't think there should be any situation in which it is possible for you to block my charge into your wizard going from skirmisher to skirmisher. And in the end, we agreed, and he didn't really do anything to circumvent that. So as it was going to be my turn, my Dragon Ogre just went away, my Chariot went away. And basically this is the end of the game. I think my guy rallied. It's more or less the end of the game. There was still one more thing that happened. So this was after my charge. I didn't manage to kill the Necromancer or the Wizard with my guy, and I thought that was quite a big deal because now my opponent's Griffin can come into the rear of my Demon Prince, get the 2 combat res. I will be able to do some combat res onto his mage, but then I am going to be not facing his Griffin, so I might even die on my own turn due to combat res. In the end, I did survive, mostly by killing the mage in the first round, and then in the second round that we still had to fight, I put 2 wounds on the Griffin, and the Griffin didn't do anything back to me, I believe. So yeah, that was quite an exciting game with a lot of stuff that happened. I like the playstyle of having a lot of different small units. I think it's not the strongest playstyle that Warriors can offer, or at least not this specific list. But yeah, the Steam Tank, it's just impossible to destroy. It's really impossible. Like the other units together, I get that. I would get that Empire can struggle quite a bit quite a bit if you want to put down a thematic infantry force, because the infantry is honestly just quite rubbish. The Empire Knights are also quite rubbish, so it's really just the steam tank, the big chicken, and the small chickens that make it rather scary, even though my list is not the most scary, I think. But yeah, it was a good game with a lot of nice angles and nice charges, some tactical decisions, and yeah. So at the end of the game, I scored a little bit less than my opponent. However, my opponent did not score twice as many victory points as me, so it wasn't a crushing defeat, but it was a minor defeat for the Warriors of Chaos. Now we moved into the next round. So next round I was up against Orcs and Goblins. It's another beautiful army. So this is the first picture that I have of the game. This is after my turn 1. I had 1 turn. No, is that true? After my turn 2, I think even. Yeah, this was after my turn 2. But I can just guide you through it again. So for me, from left to right, I have a Dragon Ogre, I have the Corn Knights, I have my Chariot, I have my Dragon Slayer Dude, I have my Marauders, my Forsaken, my Demon Prince, my Chaos Ogres, my other Dragon Ogre, and my Warhounds. For my opponent, we have a Fanatic, we have a Mangler's Quick, we have 10 Night Goblin Archers, we have a Giant, we have a Boar Chariot, we have the big brick of Night Goblins with the BSB, the Master level 4 Wizard, and the Goblin Hero. We have Savage Orc, Boar Boys, we have Goblin Chariots, and we have Wolf Riders. Oh dear. Wolf Riders. So I believe this is my opponent's turn 2. My opponent just honestly was a really good sport. Also the way that he handled Fanatics in this current edition, because Fanatics are apparently just bonkers. It's really insane what they do. So this little guy, how it works, at the start of either your own turn or the opponent's turn as the Night Goblin player, you can reveal a Fanatic and you can launch it into a direction. I believe it's that. So you, for example, these archers, they contained 1 Fanatic, which is this guy. At the start of his turn, he could put it right here and tell me, well, if you want to charge me, then you have to go through Fanatic. So you don't launch them the first turn, but you do get to decide in the first compulsory move which direction they go. So what does this mean on the table? So you move up with your Night Goblins in your own turn. Start of your opponent's turn, before he declares any charges, you put your Night Goblin Fanatics wherever you want. Basically on the path where your opponent has to land on them if he wants to complete a charge against you. Then afterwards you get the compulsory moves, and the first time you compulsory move, you can decide the direction the Fanatic goes. So if someone has charged you and has already taken the hits, you can once again send the Fanatic through, even whilst you're engaged in combat, doesn't matter, and then give you another time the hits, and the Fanatic doesn't even die. And these hits, they are d6 strength 5 every time you go through a unit. So that would be 2d6 strength 5 hits that you will unconditionally get, that you cannot do anything about. That will most likely just annihilate most units already. So yeah, that is something. Granted, the rest of the Night Goblin roster is not that powerful. I think the Mindless Quick is still quite scary. The Giant is quite scary. Also the Night Goblin Chariots are also quite scary, and the Savage Boar Boys, they're also quite scary. But for the rest, it's quite manageable, right? So I don't know how this army is supposed to work. So yeah, tactical decisions. My Dragon Ogres are quite useful at trying to lure out Fanatics. Otherwise, I have my Forsaken ones that have quite a good matchup, I think, against the Night Goblins. And then the Marauders to follow up to do some more damage. I was trying to sneak through either the knight or the chariot or this guy to get a first charge onto the Night Goblin so that my opponent wouldn't be able to count his ranks, combine it with Gathering Darkness for -2 leadership, and then hopefully quite easily break the unit. But in the end, the Heavy Chariot died to a Fanatic. The Knights had to charge something. They couldn't charge this. I don't remember why, but there was a reason. And this guy, I gave him the preoccupation of dealing with the Mangler's Quake and the Giant. So this is a bit later in the game. As you can see, the Knights, they tried to go for the War Chariot. Ah, that was it. At the point where my Knights were able to charge the Night Goblins, my opponent had released the Fanatics from that unit. And then if I were to charge in there, then it would mean basically the death of my Knights. Because I had to go through 2 Fanatics, I believe, and then afterwards they would still move through the Knights probably, if there were any left, and then kill them. So yeah, that was that was an experience. What I should mention, by the way, is that we were playing Breaking Point, and at the start of the game you calculate a third or a quarter, I think a third of the total unit strength of your list, and then as soon as the remaining models on the table are lower than that value, then your army automatically breaks and the opponent gets a crushing victory. Or you play until 6 rounds have been played and you get a draw or something. So for me the breakpoint was 17 wins, which meant that as long as I have my Dragon Ogres on the table, or my Chaos Ogres on the table undamaged, I am not at my breaking point. And that also, as you can see in a previous picture, I left my War Dogs in the ruins in cover, so that my opponent could shoot at them if he wanted to. But that was 5 extra wins that I just had in the bank, basically. So I decided to use just the entirety of my army basically as a sacrificial part to try and get my opponent below breakpoint. His breakpoint was 24, I believe, or something. So that meant that if I got rid of the big block of goblins, that he would be below, and then that would trigger his breakpoint, giving me a win. So I did manage to whittle it down quite a lot, and then I still had some Forsaken left and some Chaos Marauders, still this guy as well. He was slaughtering my Knights over here, and well, this guy was also gonna die. But in the end, I don't know, I don't have an extra picture. In the end, I did manage to kill these guys, and then my opponent got to the break point, and he lost. So that was a 9-0 to me, which was quite surprising to the both of us. We were like, okay, now, so apparently you lose. Okay, you get some points. How many points do you get? Oh, 0. Oh, that we found it a bit harsh, but it is what it is. Then the last game. So apparently this picture is a little bit out of focus. I should practice taking pictures a bit more. As you can see from the vague outlines here, my opponent is playing the Kingdom of Bretonnia with 2 units of Pegasus Knights, with some mounted yeomen, with a big block of Knights Errant, with more mounted yeomen, small block of Knights Errant, and a block of Knights of the Realm with the Damsel in there. There were some Paladins in this unit, and that was his army. He was playing the Errantry War, so every single unit was impetuous, I believe, which is, I think, one of the biggest downsides you can give yourself. But he was, it's a fluffy list, I guess. Then my opponent, I had my Dragon Ogre over here after the fast turn movement. I have my Corn Knights, my Heavy Chariot, my Demon Prince, my Forsaken, my Chaos Marauders ready for a counter charge, Dragon Ogres, Shartak, Dragon Slaying Sword Dude, War Dogs, and that was it. So this piece of forest is basically what I think made the game for me. Because of Impetuous, my opponent still has to declare a charge if he's within a certain distance of the Dragon Ogres, but he will most likely fail because he has to take the lower dice of his charge roll, and he also gets a -1 on the move. So whereas normally you would have move 8, with Errantry War you get +1 move apparently, so he goes to move 9. He can declare a charge up to 18 inches normally. Through the terrain only 17 inches, and then you get the lowest dice from the roll. I continuously put my Dragon Ogres at a 17-inch charge here. These guys also had a 17-inch charge, just to trigger the Impetuous and make him fill some charges. But yeah, let's go to the overall plan. So my overall plan, more or less, is to get my single model units, more mobile units out of line of sight of his big blocks, next to his blocks, so I can charge in and then lock him up and then charge in with the rest later. The Pegasus Knights are a bit of a problem there because they're highly mobile and they skirmish, so they see every direction, and they have very long charge ranges as well. Then again, the spell from Mark of Chaos Undivided for the -2 movement does work wonders here. So this is after my opponent's turn 1 and after my turn 2. It's a bit of a less blurry picture, so you can actually see the units in greater detail. So what did my opponent do in response to my play? So these guys, they are the Frenzied Pegasus Knights, and these are not Frenzied. They have a banner that gives them Frenzy. So my opponent readjusts his lines a bit on the left side and here. He also puts the Pegasi at this position, and I thought that was great because my Dragon Ogre can easily go behind the terrain here, and then if you have a line of sight, it seems a little bit off here, but I was definitely out of line of sight of my opponent's Pegasus Knights there. So I really like that, because then basically next turn I'm guaranteed to either spring on the left side or on the right side. My opponent cannot block both of these pieces, both of these places, unless he stayed in place with the Pegasus Knights. And I think that would be quite a good idea, because then I can just block off one entire unit of Pegasus Knights of like 250 points or something with one single Dragon Ogre, which I would say is good value, even though the rest of my board is already blocked also with by the Pegasus Knights, but that is a minor detail, we'll say. On the other side, you can see that the Pegasus Knights are suddenly here. My opponent had a conveyance spell that allowed to move again with a unit that had already moved that phase, so he put the Pegasus first in the middle, then he put them over there. This is not really bad for me, I think. So I do have my unit of War Dogs there that can block my line of sight to my character for the Pegasus Knight, so he cannot charge the character. He is out of charge range of these units, so either he's going to go to a position where I can charge with my character, or he's going to stay in line of sight of the War Dogs, and then I can charge him with the War Dogs. He will probably win the combat, I guess. He might win the combat. He might also not win the combat, right? So if he doesn't win the combat, then I'm going to engage him for another round. If he does win the combat, he can get free, but then he still has the War Dogs in his line. So that is not pretty as well. Also, I would have to minimize contact that thing, and he has to align, so that would be fine. But in this way, my opponent in his next turn, he can charge the dogs. If he does charge the dogs, then either he has to overrun and then come into a danger zone where I can charge him both with the character on the steed and the short tag, or he doesn't charge me and he restrains, and I can still charge him with my character. So I thought this was quite a good play of just sacrificing a small unit for the greater good. So my opponent does what I explained. He does charge in with the Pegasus Knights, he does clean up the War Dogs, and I believe he stays where he was. Here on the left side, he repositions the Pegasus Knights next to my Dragon Ogre, more or less, and here in the middle he shuffles a bit up, puts some more pressure on me to make it still a difficult charge for me, but a very easy charge for himself. But he exposes his flank to the marching chariot. So I think this is the turn where he gave away the game. Because the Pegasus Knights, I could charge them quite easily with my Corn Knights, and I was even in range with my Demon Prince to give them the Demonic Vigor for the +1 agility on the charge. So that as my opponent countercharged and also got +3 agility, I still got to strike fast with my higher initiative. And I killed one of the guys. He didn't kill any of mine, which was quite impressive, I would say. But I would still have won if I had taken some wins back. Dragon Ogre could go forward to threaten the flank of this unit. The Chariot could go forward to threaten the flank. Basically, these two units have to charge my Stubborn Forsaken that are always going to be able to fall back in good order. Then my Chariot does a definite counter charge. The Demon Prince can go in. This guy could have gone more this way because of the situation there, but I put him there. And here on the right side, so yeah, the Pegasus Knights of my opponent, they did go in a position where it was a bit awkward for them, and then my opponent actually elected to flee as a charge reaction. So that meant that my guy couldn't really make it to them and shard attack as well. Yeah, I don't know if it was the right call for him to flee, but if he didn't flee, then definitely he would have gotten the two of them in, and that would also not have been pretty. So it was really a bad move on his part to charge my dogs, I think. And I think this is going to be the last picture that I have. So basically everything that I just explained happened. So at this point the knights have gone off the table, came back, and this is turn 6 where we have this combat. So my Chaos Marauders managed to get a flank charge eventually on this big block of knights that is not so big anymore. My Demon Prince came in, my Chariot came in twice. So this is the point where this unit is going to break and flee away. And here I have some Dragon Ogres in the end in the rear of my opponent's knights. I didn't manage to do enough damage with the Dragon Ogres, so I'm a bit disappointed with the Dragon Ogres, mostly because of weapon skill 3 is quite low. Yeah, mostly that actually. And yeah, it's really mostly that. And weapon skill 3 also means that you get hit very easily, so that is not that pretty. In the end, we did count up the points, so I have basically everything still left on the table, even my Dragon Ogre here that had taken 3 wounds, but I think he still rallies just on discipline 8. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe it's based on the amount of models that you have and not on the wounds that you have taken on the models. So in the end I had lost my Forsaken and I had lost my War Dogs, and my opponent had lost everything except for this big unit because I didn't manage to break it in the end. But the fact that I only lost a very minor part meant that it's quite easy to double the points taken from your opponent, and thus get a crushing victory. So that was, quite an experience. I like the army that I played. I think it gave very interesting tactical decisions and a lot of interesting maneuvering. Do I think that it was a competitive list? No, not at all. Do I think I would want to play the game competitively after this? I think everybody at the event had fairly fluff-oriented lists, and I think competitively the game becomes way less interesting than if you tone it down with everyone. So maybe my list was still a bit more on the competitive end, or maybe also I have a lot of experience with 9th Age on how to use these type of armies where you just have a lot of components that you can use. So yeah, there's definitely strong choices in the different books. I would most notably say that the Fanatics were really impressive, and the Steam Tank was quite impressive. All in all, I think that the game might be it's quite an enjoyable game. Would I play it competitively? I don't think so. But I will make another video about that. For now, thanks for watching, and I will see you then next time.